Buenos dias und herzlich willkommen bei Gate 7, deinem Podcast über Fernweh und Fotografie. In dieser Show geht es um Menschen, für die Reisen mehr ist als Spaß und Erholung. Freue dich auf praktische Tipps und Tricks, wie du tief in fremde Kulturen eintauchst und lerne, deine Abenteuer in bewegenden Bildern festzuhalten, egal mit welcher Kamera. Bist du bereit? Dann los, lass uns abheben mit deinem Gastgeber, Kai Beermann.
Ja, zuletzt war ich ja immer ein bisschen zu spät dran mit der Veröffentlichung einer neuen Podcast-Folge. Diesmal 2 Tage zu früh am Freitag statt wie gewohnt am Sonntag. Das hatte aber einen Grund, und zwar war Thomas in den vergangenen Tagen extrem fleißig und hat das Video von unseren erlebnisreichen Tagen beim Fotofestival Lagacy Baden Foto fertiggestellt. Ist jetzt auf YouTube und da wollte ich natürlich nachziehen, damit du, wenn du dieses Interview mit Ragnar Axelsson hörst, eben rüberhüpfen kannst zu YouTube, um dir die entsprechenden Bewegbilder dazu auch anzuschauen. Also Gate 7, diesmal am Freitag statt wie gewohnt am Sonntag. Ja, das Interview mit Ragnar Axelsson war wirklich etwas ganz Besonderes. Wir haben es gemeinsam mit unseren Freunden vom Foto-Podcast geführt, mit Thomas und Ulrike. Gruß an euch an dieser Stelle und der Hinweis oder Aufruf, auch beim Foto-Podcast reinzuhören. Es lohnt sich auf jeden Fall. Das Gespräch ist aber nicht nur deswegen besonders, weil wir es in einer Vierer-Konstellation geführt haben, sondern natürlich vor allem, weil Ragnar Axelsson ein fantastischer Fotograf ist. Er kann auf eine jahrzehntelange Karriere zurückblicken. Er ist in der Arktik mit seiner Kamera sein ganzes Leben lang unterwegs gewesen und das merkt man seinem Werk eben auch an, diese enorme Tiefe, diese enorme Kenntnis der Region und das Interesse für die Menschen, die dort leben. Von all dem berichtet er in diesem Interview, von seiner Besessenheit der Fotografie, mit der Kamera Momente einzufangen und vor allen Dingen eine Welt einzufangen, die es in einigen Jahren so in dieser Form nicht mehr geben wird. Er hat den Wandel beobachtet, der dort stattfindet im hohen Norden, ausgelöst durch den Klimawandel und was das für die Menschen, die dort leben, bedeutet. Er spricht von seiner Leidenschaft, von seiner großen Hartnäckigkeit, immer wieder an Orte zurückzukehren, sich mit Menschen auszutauschen, wirklich tief in ihr Leben einzutauchen. Wir sprechen über Mentoren, die seinen Weg in der Fotografie geprägt haben. Ragnar verrät, warum er einmal nur für einen Tag nach New York geflogen ist, um dort eine Ausstellung von W. Eugene Smith zu besuchen, was er dort mitgenommen hat. Wir sprechen über seine Freundschaft zu Mary Ellen Mark. Von ihr hat er die Hartnäckigkeit übernommen, sich nicht zu früh zufrieden zu geben mit einem Bild. Er machte das deutlich mit einer Geschichte. Erzählte er, dass er einmal mit einem Hundeschlitten unterwegs war, hinten auf dem Schlitten saß und von dem Fahrer und den Hunden Fotos gemacht hat und er dachte schon, er hat das Foto auf der Speicherkarte, das er gerne machen wollte in diesem Moment, und als er schon dabei war, die Kamera wieder in der Tasche zu verstauen, weil es natürlich unheimlich kalt war, da hörte er eine Stimme in seinem Kopf, die von Mary Ellen Mark, die sagte, mach weiter, hör nicht auf. Und er antwortete dann im Geiste, Mary Ellen, weißt du eigentlich, wie kalt das hier ist? Und da sagte sie dann nur, ja, das ist mir egal, mach einfach weiter. Und letztendlich war dieser Rat Gold wert, denn beim Durchsehen der Bilder später hatte Ragnar dann festgestellt, dass das Bild, was er eigentlich schon als das im Kopf hatte, was es sein sollte, nichts geworden war und erst einige Aufnahmen später eben das Bild dabei herausgekommen ist, für das er sich letztendlich entschieden hat. Du kannst dich auf diese und viele weitere Anekdoten in diesem Gespräch freuen, dazu viele praktische Tipps für deine eigene Fotografie. Es war wirklich eine Freude, Ragnar zuzuhören und mal wieder ein Beweis dafür, dass Interviews, die persönlich geführt werden, doch noch um einiges tiefer sind als die via Skype geführt werden. Insofern auch für mich war das nochmal die Erinnerung, wenn immer möglich, eben das Aufnahmegerät dabei zu haben, um die Möglichkeit zu nutzen, Gespräche direkt aufzuzeichnen. Dafür war Baden natürlich fantastisch. Wir haben noch viele weitere Interviews dort geführt. Auch darauf gibt es einen kleinen Vorgeschmack in dem YouTube-Video von Thomas. Also da auf jeden Fall mal reinschauen. Da siehst du schon, was dich in Zukunft erwartet. Den Link dazu findest du natürlich in den Shownotes zu dieser Episode in deiner Podcast-App oder auf www.gate7.de, 7 ausgeschrieben, nicht als Zahl und dann /Ragnar-Axelsson. Wenn du darüber hinaus noch exklusivere Inhalte haben möchtest, dann schau gerne bei Abenteuer-Reportagefotografie vorbei, www.abenteuer-reportagefotografie.de. Das ist der Ort, an dem Thomas und ich dich wirklich mit hinter die Kulissen nehmen, dir noch viele weitere Tipps geben rund um das visuelle Geschichtenerzählen mit der Kamera. Es geht nicht nur um die Reportage, sondern auch um Street Photography und alle anderen Genres, in der Storytelling wichtig ist. Ja, und was dich sonst noch so alles in unserem interaktiven Online-Kurs erwartet, darüber haben wir kürzlich ausführlich mit Thomas Füngerlings und Gregor Nick gesprochen im Podcast Weekly 52. Die Episode erscheint am 4. September, also die Empfehlung, auch da reinzuhören. In der vergangenen Woche waren wir dort schon mal zu Gast, da ging es dann um ein Fazit der Tage in Baden und das Gleiche findest du auch bei Gate 7. Da gab es vor 2 Wochen eine Bilanz, die Thomas und ich gezogen haben, gemeinsam mit Ulrike und Thomas vom Fotopodcast. Also jede Menge neuer Inhalte, vor allen Dingen auch rund um das Fotofestival in Baden. Deswegen möchte ich das Intro jetzt auch nicht noch länger in die Länge ziehen. Lass uns direkt einsteigen in das Interview mit Ragnar Axelsson. Viel Spaß!
Well, hello, Ragnar. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us here in Baden to talk about your beautiful work. We had a chance to look at your images yesterday displayed on huge panels here in Baden. What was it like for you to see your images displayed in this way here?
Oh, that's an honor. That's a great honor. And it's always, to see it that big outside, it's like a kind of a shock, saying, "Wow, did I do that?" So it's great. But I have had in galleries, so it's different a little bit. When you're inside with the frames and all that. But this is great.
Yeah. You've always been a photographer who's put much emphasis and importance on seeing the pictures printed as well. Doing the research for this interview, I came across one anecdote that you told that once you went to New York to see the pictures of Eugene Smith on the wall in the gallery. So to learn about his printing technique, and then you went back to the darkroom trying to put into practice what you learned from him. Can you tell a little bit what it was about this trip, and also what this photographer means to you?
Oh, he's one of the greatest photographers ever, I think. There are many great ones, and he was great. And I kind of was watching his work, and I wanted to see how he was printing, because I grew up kind of in a darkroom. I was always in the darkroom. My father made a darkroom for me, so I was always there, and it was a magical moment seeing a picture come to life in the developer, And so I wanted to see his work, and I called some gallery. I don't remember where it was. It was in New York, and told my wife I want to go to New York just to see how he prints. She was against it, so. But I went anyway. Told her. She thought I was up in the Highlands. Went for a day and back the next day just to see how he was printing. And I was put on a mask and white gloves to see the prints, which was beautiful. And I got straight back home and started using, as he used ferrocyanide, which is a very poison thing actually. So I was practicing on that, and it was, for a long time I was practicing printing like he did, because I liked how he did it. And there's a film about him now, Minamata, played by Johnny Depp. And so you see a little bit into his life, and he was kind of crazy, but I think sometimes you have to be a little bit crazy to do what he did.
That's a good jumping off point that you need to be a little bit crazy as a photographer to do this kind of images. You photographed in extreme conditions, very cold conditions in the Arctic. Before we come to that, I'd like to stay with Eugene Smith for a while. Apart from his printing technique, was there anything else that you took away from him about his approach to photography, his style of photography, of storytelling?
Yeah, it was how he got so much into everything he was doing, and I think that is very important to work like that. So, because especially when you photograph, what was my passion photographing in the Arctic was it's easy to go and sail around an iceberg in a rubber boat and take pictures of an iceberg and go back home. But I think you have to go into the story and into like people's life and stay with them. And so I did that. I stayed with them on the sea ice in a tent and got to know them, gained their trust to be able to photograph their life and ask them questions about what the future will hold for them. So then you really got into what was happening. We are reading in books about what's happening, but they are walking on the pages in the book. So it's a huge knowledge they have. So that was the thing I wanted to get. And that's what he did. He did really go into all the stories he did, and it shows in his photographs.
Was it very difficult to get in contact with the people?
Not really. Sometimes, though, it took some time, and it spreads around when I got to know one, then another one, and so when I go to another place, they sometimes contact, and he's okay. So it takes just time, so to be a part of their group, and it has to be. It's a little bit like sometimes to break the ice between us, just to joke a little, and so they feel that they can trust you. I think that's important. That show them respect, and you can get everywhere.
And you lived with them, and they knew you as well. And
we lived in on the sea ice in a tent, and they were hunting seals and narwhal and polar bears. And in the afternoon, we were getting cold. We were warming up the tent and we played cards. And I lost all the time. They cheated. So I lost my gear, but I had to make a deal with them, keep my gear and my clothes on until back. So that kind of made us all laugh, and they were happy with it. They needed it more than I did when I was leaving. So it was kind of, it built up a great friendship, and I still have great friendship with them.
How long did you live with them?
It was up to 5 weeks sometimes in tents and small cabins. But usually to go like that now is like being not more than maybe 2 weeks, because when you stay on the ice, you look to the left, there's only ice, and you look to the right, there's only ice, and icebergs, of course. But so you're taking the same photograph sometimes over and over again, but you never know what happens. Mm-hmm. And so that is... you keep your concentration if you're not too long. Otherwise, you don't know if there's anybody alive in the world sometimes, because you're out of reach from everything.
Mm-hmm. You once said that when you started out as a photographer, all your colleagues, everybody went to Africa, and you turned the other direction. You went to the Nordic. You're from Iceland, and so what other reason was there to focus on that region, whereas everybody else seemed to be looking another way?
I read the stories from great Arctic explorers. There was a Danish guy, Knud Rasmussen, and Peter Freuchen. They wrote different books. From the same journey, they wrote 2 books. One was boring and one was hilarious, because he added the funny parts happening in his book. Peter Freuchen, he was kind of like a Munchausen. But the stories, they were true in a way, though, what he wrote. And I was so, excited seeing this kind of life. So, and it was a dream since I was just a young boy. And so I went. And it's still ongoing, actually. I've been going like 50 times or something.
Mm-hmm. You grew up on a farm, a very remote place. How did that impact you growing up? What was your childhood like? Your relation to nature, to the people?
When I was 8 years old, first time I went. I was there for about 8 years, 8 years, 8 summers, and there were no bridges to pass the glacial rivers. I had to be flown in by an aircraft, and I felt like the whole world was mine. You know, I was 10 years old on a horse. I had a white horse, and I had to measure the rivers, glacial rivers, because all the people on the farm, there were 5 brothers, 2 sisters. They were scientists, and they were measuring the glaciers and the rivers, and always writing it down, taking the weather every day. So I had to pass a glacial river on a horse, 10 years old, to measure the next one. And I was alone, and I felt like it was great. Today you would be taken away from your parents if you do that. But it made me kind of stronger, you know, and being a little bit more brave to do things like going to the Arctic. I'm not a brave man, but I just felt like I could do more, you know. So that was, and I saw the glaciers were retreating. And I thought the people I photographed the people in their environment and the farmers, and I thought this is going to change. So it started early on at the age of 10, and the best pictures, it's in the book that I did in the exhibition in Munich, which I took when I was 10. It's probably the best pictures I ever taken. So there was no improvement. But that's started it all, actually. To photograph people in their environment and documenting life. It's my passion in a way.
You've stayed with that theme now throughout your career. How important is that in your eyes for a photographer to find something that he really has, a theme that he knows about, that he feels, and that comes from within?
It feels... it's how do I say it? It's just something that happens inside of you. You just feel like it's like writing a song. You write certain kind of songs. You don't try to write other types of songs. You stick with working from your heart. That's what I did. And it was like, it kind of I couldn't take it out. I had to do this. I did a lot of things. I worked for a newspaper. I did sports and everything. And it was fun, the news. It was great. But my mind was always on this documentary work. And I think today photography has always been important. It's even more important than today to show people how life on Earth is and the changes that are happening. And if you take, for instance, photography, how it is, it's kind of fighting for its life in a way. Because it has changed so drastically in 10, 15 years. And today the most popular ones are on Instagram. It's little girls and guys wiggling their ass in front of a waterfall. It has nothing to do with life on Earth. It's just a funny picture, but they're very highly rated, which is someday they will find out it's not.
I think you told us you were there about 50 times on photo tours. Normally, a big deal is the preparation for such a trip. But is there something like routine for you, so you don't have to do a lot of preparation nowadays?
I do a lot of preparation all the time. But at first, I didn't know how to go, so I was freezing. But I do. When you go that, you have to always. I do rely on them. I trust them. You know, the hunters, the skilled ones. I pick the ones that I know that are good. Okay. Because there are good hunters and there are not so good hunters. But my friends are very good ones. So I prepare now that I did for years. I go swimming in the ocean every day, no matter how the weather is, because I've fallen in the ocean in Greenland in crevices 3 or 4 times, and that's cold, I can tell you. And so I had to be training a little bit like that, and it's I think it heals everything going in the ocean, and it makes you more fit, and it makes you prepared if something happens, because sometimes you had to put up a tent and warm it up and dry our clothes before we could continue, because we were all wet and freezing. So ice sometimes cracks and breaks up, so you have to find a way through to get back to safety. And so, it's also a mentality. You have to keep your head straight and just be afraid afterwards.
Have there been any situations where you were in danger photographing in that harsh conditions?
I never thought about it that way. But when thinking back, it was probably, because we were sometimes like, I was in a little village in East Greenland when there was a storm warning. We shouldn't go out. And my friend is a hunter living in the next village. And I saw a guy with the binoculars looking out on the sea ice. And I knew it was his brother. He's my friend's brother. I never met him before. And I came to him, and he was very angry looking in a way when he saw me. And I just asked him, can I take one picture of you? Just, yes, you can take one. So I took one, and he said, are you finished? Yes, said one. And then he laughed. It broke the ice between us. And he was telling me that he was looking for polar bears. But I told him there's a storm warning, so nobody should get out. But he said, if we see one, we might try to get one. And asked him, can you let me know? I'm in that little cabin over there. Can you let me know if you see one? 10 minutes later, he came running. There are 5 polar bears. And my brother is going out. And Hjalmar is one of the greatest hunters in Greenland. And I asked him when he came to the little village where I was, can I come with you? And he said, we're not allowed to take you with us, anybody. So I looked him in the eye. I said, well, I'm coming with you. And he looked, it was the longest 30 seconds in my life. And he said, stay behind, so I'm not seeing you. So you can, I will say that you just followed. And so we followed. We ran like 7-8 kilometers and followed the polar bears, and he got one. And we had to, there's one picture on the exhibition here, this little tiny guy, and you see the rough eyes. And when he shot the polar bear, he was trying to escape, and he fell on the ice. And he was reaching for more bullets. They had fallen out of his pocket when we were running. So we had no bullets, and 4 polar bears close by, which we did not know where they were. But his brother came fast, so we were probably in danger for 20 minutes, something like that. But usually they run away. So, and that polar bear that was on the ice, Hjalmar asked me, you have to stop taking pictures and help me drag it to the safe ice. 10 minutes later, where the polar bear was, the ice was open water because the current was so strong. And we could see the storm coming from the mountains. And so it took us 4 hours to fight in the storm, getting back to safety. And the ice was breaking up. And it was a moment when Hjalmar said, are you insured? And I said, no, I forgot. And he said that, well, if we get a helicopter, they will rescue us, but you will have to pay for the helicopter. And I didn't have any money to pay for a helicopter. So I told him, you take the helicopter, I walk home. And that's another 30 seconds with the long ones. And he said, we go together. And we went back together. And when we came to the village where I was, in my cabin, and he put his arms around me after 30 years of friendship. And he said, well, I didn't know you could be that tough. I wasn't tough. I was terrified, But, I told him, I have pictures that I'm not sure you want the world to see. Because I don't want to harm you, do any harm to you. And he said, silence for a few seconds, and he said, I want the world to see my life. I can't go to the shop like you can. I have to hunt to feed my family. And so it was a great moment. And I asked him, if I could give you one wish, what would it be? And he said, give me 25 years back in time when the sea ice was safe. So you learn from them a lot. And you want to, when you photograph them, you want to show the world a life that most of us don't know anything about. Because, it's a beautiful life. It's fading away in a way.
Yeah. It's a life that is disappearing, and it's also a life that not many people are able to witness themselves. So this is your job kind of as a photographer. But what you've told us just now, it's a story, it's adventure. How much more is photography for you, apart from taking the pictures in the moment? experiencing all this, being out there on the ice, chasing polar bears, feeling the cold, everything that comes around. I mean, the pressing of the shutter button is just a moment. It's important, but how important is the rest of it?
It's very important. The moment for me is I grew up with my father gave me books of painters, so I was looking at paintings. I can't paint, so I had to take pictures, and he gave me magazines. He ordered from. I grew up with Stern magazine and old Life magazines, so that he had collected and gave to me. And I remember the great German photographers Ulrich Mark and Helfried Weyer. He was in the Arctic. So that was my heroes in photography in a way then. And so it's when clicking the moment, like in a painting, they paint like expression of people's faces and certain, positions. It's the same in photography. It's, you have to catch the right moment for me and the expression on people's faces and things like that. But when working on the pictures is also like Eugene Smith in the darkroom. You create it. And I do it in black and white. I like black and white much better than color. So it's all the way to finish the picture like that. Make the atmosphere in it and the feeling you had when you took it. It's my opinion on it. And in documentary work, you just do what I can do in a darkroom, nothing more, because that's a very strict rule for me. It's because you cannot add or take anything out in documentary work. You can do it if you're doing advertisements or some artwork. You feel like an artwork, but not in documentary.
You mentioned how important black and white photography is to you, and I found one quote where you, I think, were referring to digital photography and the process of turning a color image to monochrome black and white, that it hurts your heart when people do that.
Yeah, well, I do that, but it's always wondering. It's always what hurts my heart is that, am I cheating doing this? Mm-hmm. I took it in color, so I bought like a monochrome, so I can't do it. But I always do it when I do a color on a color camera. Mm-hmm. I turn it to black and white right away. It's been taking me years to say, you're not cheating. Mm-hmm. It's just the way you want to shoot. But it probably is. I mean, it's in color. But the tree is in color, and you take a black and white picture. Isn't that cheating anyway?
Perhaps. It's the proximity to science, so you feel like this.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be doing it. You want to be, honest. Yeah.
And do you see in black and white before you take the picture?
Yes. Yeah. I even had sunglasses that looked like black.
A lot of photographers who like black and white tell they see it in black and white, although it's in color.
Mm-hmm. And the good thing with black and white, I really don't like the reason I take a lot of pictures in bad weather, because nobody goes out in bad weather, and it's the most rewarding pictures. And when you're in the sunshine, it's too much sun. I never like that. And so it's in black and white, it's more dramatic even when the weather is bad.
Mm. You've talked about how challenging these conditions are, and what they do mentally to you. And I think they have also taken a physical toll on you. Yesterday, when you talked about your work, you were referring to some injury you have with your hand. I think. Yeah.
They froze. I've been freezing my toes and everything, my face, many times. But my hands froze in some 3 years ago. Yeah, three and a half. I had 2 pairs of gloves. I took the outer part because I couldn't click anymore. I thought the camera was something wrong with it. But it was my fingers, so I took it off for 10 minutes and they froze. This one still hurts every day. And the others are kind of numb. The fingertips, they were all white and then black. But that's okay. I mean, they're going to be fine, and it doesn't bother me. It's the only thing. It does a good thing. My wife don't allow me to clean up the dishes because I break them. So there's always something good about everything.
Always look on the positive side.
Yeah, but that was my stupidity actually, take the gloves off, but I was so excited getting the picture. So And I got it, and when I look at it, I love the picture, but I also, there you are. It's a love-hate relationship with one photograph.
Are there any other photographs that stick out that, you connect with a special story like that or an experience you had making the picture?
I tell stories behind pictures at home and on the internet and on TV every Sunday morning, and when I see, I can't forget what I was doing 5 minutes ago, but if I see a photograph that I took 20 years ago and I look at it and I think, I remember the whole day, So, there's a lot of photographs that I have some feelings about and stories behind that are really, they're stuck with me. And they kind of photographs that becomes my favorites in a way because of the story behind them. But it's hard to do that because when you're editing like a work or something, you have to throw out some pictures that you probably like because we're making books, they don't fit in, and it's very hard sometimes.
Mm-hmm. You said every Sunday you talk about a picture on TV. Is it an ongoing thing or what?
It's an ongoing thing. Been now for 1.5 years. It's on a webpage and it was a news agency, and they have a lot of sections. So this is one of it. It's on Sunday morning, and then they cut it together and play it on TV on Monday evenings for like 3 months, and then it's a pause, and then we start again. And I really had fun doing it because at least though. People get to understand a little bit what we are doing, because a photograph is just a photograph for people to see, and nobody really thinks what's behind it. You had to go there. You have to freeze your ass off, and do a lot of things to get it. And but the photograph to most people is just a photograph. But now when they hear the stories, they get a different view on it. So I really, was happy about that people say that you're not just a photographer, you're just, you're doing something that probably might matter to the world in the future, and you are freezing a moment in someone's life that will last forever. And you never know when photograph becomes an iconic photograph, like the little girl running from the napalm bomb in Vietnam, and the Minamata, Eugene Smith, Tomoko in the bath. It's beautiful photographs. It's like legendary work.
Do you remember any situations? Are there any images you couldn't get and you remember and say,
oh yeah,
I lost it?
Always, yeah. Yeah, there's. I think it's sometimes getting worse now because I'm doing all 8 Arctic countries now. I'm like a journey through them, and I'm probably 60% done. But I was going to Siberia and. The war broke out, so I couldn't go, and I went straight to Greenland. And I didn't know that I had been trying to get a photograph of an old man living. He's a last man in that village called Cap Hope, and I never got him actually. So I went and I drove to his village with a friend of mine, Hjalmar, in his dog sled, and he was there, and he was leaving the village. He was going to hospital and he was leaving for good. And he had 20 brothers and sisters. The 2 of them left, and he had 4 wives or girlfriends. They're all dead. And he sees ghosts, tiny little hidden people, and he's terrified of them. They rescued his father, he said, when he was young on the ice. And he did something to them that they didn't like, so he was afraid of them. And good stories. And when he was leaving, I photographed him looking back, and he said, "There's no hope in Cap Hope anymore." He was the last man standing in the village, and the houses are crumbling down, filled with snow, and all that. And I asked a woman in the village, "Do you believe his stories about the ghosts?" And she said, "No, we didn't. But he showed us little kamik boots that was found on his loft. Nobody knows how to make them. So we started. Maybe he's right. Whether he's right or not, the story is good. So I write those stories down, and I write them down just to give them a voice and tell this a part of their life. So it adds something to the picture. And this is a moment that I got that I had always missed. I missed, he was gone. I'd been there many, many times, and I was always like, oh, he left 1 hour ago. So finally, I got there, and he was there. So it sometimes comes back that you're trying to get.
You did a book about dogs, Arctic heroes, and in the title, it's not about men; it's about dogs. So that implies that dogs have a very special meaning for the people living out there. They're not just dogs; they have their personality, and they are vital for the people for their survival. And you also told some beautiful stories about particular dogs, or something that the Inuit and the people you met out there, the hunters, they told you about their dogs. Can you share some of those stories and tell what's the importance of the dogs for the people?
The Greenlandic sled dog is probably among the oldest dog breed in the world. I think they have found bones in Greenland 7,500 years old, something like that. And the culture has been there 4,500 years, and the Inuits living there now is about 1,100 years. And without the Greenlandic sled dog, there wouldn't be any Inuits. And the stories they told me, how special dog, they're different characters. And you have stupid ones, you have clever ones, and you have bad guys and good guys. And I was trying to learn to see it in their eyes, and so I had clapped the wrong dogs many times. But the clever ones, they are really clever. And the stories they told me, which I wrote in the book, how they took them home when all things, well, it was over. They didn't see, they couldn't, like one, to make long story short, it was a guy, he had taken his dogs once, certain route, and when he was getting back home, there was a storm and he couldn't see his hands, and the dog was just all low, and they found the way in the storm. They smelled their way. The leader dog was such a clever dog, two of them. And so there are many stories like that, but they didn't want to tell those stories. I had to drag it out of them. Like my friend Ole, who told me a story about Kendo, which means black dog. And we named our publishing company after that dog because the story was so beautiful. And Ole told me about it was his best friend, and it was a beautiful story, but he was not going to tell me stories. He says, they're going with me to the grave. And I had been there for a week talking to him, and the day before I left the village, I told him, Ole, you have to write those stories down for your kids and grandchildren and your ancestors, because it's beautiful stories, and I know there are beautiful stories you have. And he said, oh, I'll think about it. And next day he said, I'll tell you the stories. And he told me a story about Kendo, which is in the book. And when he had finished the story, he cried. And he said, I'll tell you more story next time. There was no next time. He died 3 months later, so... But I got a few stories from him, and they are in the book. And I promised him that I would only run it in the book, and in the book it is to honor him and his legacy and the story. But the dogs are really, really great heroes, actually, alongside with the hunters. They need each other.
So many stories you heard, and you're documenting a world that is slowly disappearing now, and with that there's disappearing the wisdom of the people who've lived in these conditions for so many years. Is there anything that you've learned from these people about life, about approaching life, or? Oh yeah, I learned a lot. I learned being like humble towards this kind of life, because when I came first, I was kind of, I was a young man, kind of arrogant, thinking about it, and saying that, well, we the Vikings, we could beat you with bare hands, easily. We make a bet who was going to stay out longer with your bare hands. I was 5 minutes, he was 25 minutes. So it was like you learn to be humble towards and respect that, and respect other things everywhere, whatever life on earth, it's it made me rethink everything, and they have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of friends, scientists, and I always urge them to say, like one of my friends, scientist, said, you have to learn from him, and he went with me and said, thank you, I learned a lot.
because they know a lot of things about what's happening on our planet and climate change and all that. But those guys know a lot. But the first impression that I was in Thule, I think it was 86, and I passed a guy's house, and he was always saying something in Greenlandic, which I didn't understand. So I asked, on the 5th day, I asked the teacher in the village, can you translate what he's saying? And he said these words, there's something wrong. It shouldn't be like this. The big ice is sick. He was talking about the Greenlandic ice cap, the whole ice cap. And he felt it. He was an old man. He knew that, and he saw things were changing. I'm not blaming you or me for what's happening, but I leave that to scientists to tell us. But I think it's important for me and everybody to document this kind of changes in life. It supports what they are saying, maybe, and it also shows others that there is life, and this kind of life is changing. It will be, the young generation doesn't want to be hunters anymore. They want to live a different kind of life. So, and the dogs population, there were 30,000 dogs some 11 years ago. Now there's about 11,000 left. So it shows how it's going down too.
Slowly going back, the population of the dogs, the hunters, they look for other ways of lives. Yeah. Are there any other signs that you witnessed over the decades that you've been going back and forth, how it has changed?
Yeah, you see the glaciers retreating. Like in Iceland, you see them, they retreat somewhere 100 meters a year. You see that thinning. I saw that as a kid, and they have been smaller before, they've been bigger, but this is happening now. Our planet is in that phase of it. This is ongoing, and in Greenland, I flew with my friends, scientists, up to Thule. We flew up all the glacier, and when we were heading back from Qaanaaq down to Ilulissat, we were flying above the glacier, and it was all grey. And I was saying, this is I've never seen this before. It's all grey. It was slush. And NASA, it was the same time, and NASA took the satellite photograph showing 97% of the glacier melting, which is also a phenomenon that happens 150 years, every 150 years. So, but we were there above when it was happening. So seeing that was kind of scary. And all the blue lakes, thousands of them on the surface of glacier, that's something that the numbers of blue lakes are increasing, actually. So it's melting.
I imagine you've been asked this question many times, but doing these kind of photographs, what is it that you try to make an impact with, or do you think you can make an impact with your pictures, or what is it that you'd like for people to take away that look at your pictures?
Oh, that's a good question. I just want to show the world, or those who see it, what's happening, and I get hit on a lot by people saying this is not happening, it's just bullshit, but they've never been there, So I just wanted to photograph and make books. We made our own company because we didn't want to go on our knees to some publishing company, didn't understand it either. So we made our own. Oh, we'll just do it. So we did all the books we did, based on all. And then we did Glacier, we did Arctic Heroes, and Where the World is Melting, which it's in collaboration with Kerer in Germany, a great publisher. And so in the exhibition in Munich, we did that catalog book, Where the World is Melting. It shows places where it is melting or changing. So I want to just at least make people think about it. That's the reason we want it. It's a passion, something, I don't know, it's something that it's called stupidity, being so stubborn doing it, I think. But I think it has to be done and documented. And it has to be be aware of how people live and show people in the pictures, not just iceberg floating around. They're going to be there for 1,000 years floating like that, but the people will be different and life will be different.
When you look into the future, what's your scenario? What are you projecting from now into the future? Do you see any signs of hope that we might learn what we've done wrong in the past and be able to correct course?
I'm always optimistic about it. I hope so, but sometimes you think, like my friends, scientists say that the Icelandic glaciers will disappear in 150, 200 years. And even if you would flip the switch now, they would still melt. And so that's a scary thing to hear. But I wanted to, I think every one of us has to do maybe something. I'm not saying we should stop the wheels turning around the planet, but you have to say with your grandchildren when they ask you, grandfather, grandmother, why didn't you do anything? You leave it for us to solve it. So I think at least we all have to continue living, but it would be stupid to ignore it, not to, realizing that if there's something you can do, you should do it.
I recently talked with Nick Brandt about this topic as well, and I asked him a question if he has the feeling that, like before COVID, my impression was that the climate debate was very high on the agenda, also with Greta Thunberg, these movements that she started. And, but then COVID hit and everything went back a little bit on the agendas of the politicians. Now we have the war in the Ukraine, so many other crises. Yeah. And, he rightly mentioned that this is a very European view on the thing that in the US nobody was talking about climate before COVID even, and that is right now with the new bill passed by the president that it's been on the agenda. So these different perspectives, and what's your observation of the state we are right now, the awareness, the global awareness of this problem and the ability to fight it?
Yeah, well, those things like the war, it takes over everything in the world. COVID took over, like thinking about it. But I think what's happening doesn't go away. And I believe that the Arctic will be, in coming years, the biggest issue on the planet anyway, because that is the biggest threat. Of course, is nuclear threat. I mean, because of the war, that's a big threat. But the other way, if nothing like that happens, then this is the big threat in the Arctic, and all ice will be there, I think. It's melting 4 times faster than everything, or warming 4 times faster than anywhere else on the planet. And I've been walking on those pages for nearly 40 years, and I've seen how the ice is thinning on the place where we were hunting. Where we used to be safe. It's not safe anymore. It's very thin, and you have to be very careful sometimes, and sometimes you can't even go out. Yeah. So when you see it, at least, those, it's like blinking of an eye in Earth's history. What is the Earth? 4.6 billion years old. So it's like blinking of an eye with this time period we are living on, but at least it is happening. Yeah. I wish it wasn't, but that's what I've seen.
Right. Yesterday, we went around here looking at the exhibitions of all the other photographers. You've been there as well, looking at the work of your colleagues. What is the impression you took away from this day yesterday? Are there any projects, any images that stuck out for you?
There's many. I knew most of them. I've looked through the work. I look a lot through other photographers' work, and I have a huge problem with myself that I cannot envy others. It makes me happy seeing somebody doing something great, and it's a drive, So I see a great photograph. Oh, I want to do it like that. So, and then I take a picture, and the idea comes from this picture, but you can't see it. It was just something that clicked in the head. It's like writing a song. You hear a good song, and you want to make a better song, or try to. And I really enjoyed seeing it, and I want to go today and see it again, And so it's a lot of great work being done.
You can always take away something from colleagues. I knew one mentor of you was Mary Ellen Mark. Yeah. You mentioned. Can you tell the story how you got to know her and why she is so particularly important?
It's a passion she had, and she died in 2015. I came to her. She was my teacher, in Florida, and everybody, the first school day, everybody should bring some fruit or something, And at the time, Iceland didn't have beer, so I brought 6-pack of beer in the morning for breakfast. And she laughed, and that's crazy. And we became very good friends. And she and her husband, Martin Bell, he's a filmmaker. I used to work with Attenborough, and they came on holiday every summer to Iceland, and this was a passion and a drive she had, even when she was when she died. She was working a few hours before. She was a wonderful woman, sadly missed, and one of the greatest photographers ever. Beautiful woman.
You did a workshop with her, or
yeah. And then she came to Iceland. Had a lot of workshops and holidays, and we helped her when she was there, and they were great. Yeah. And I did learn a lot from her. She kicked my ass, constantly, and said when I was on the call, I took photographs. Said, "Why didn't you take more pictures?" Well, I was finished. You're never finished. And when I took one photograph in Greenland. I remember her words. I was we were heading back home after 2 weeks on the sea ice in very cold conditions, and I was trying to capture the hunter sitting. I was behind him on the dog sled, and I thought I had the picture, so I was freezing, and I put my cameras down, and I could hear her voice, keep on taking pictures. And I was like, "Very Ellen, do you know how cold it is here?" And he replied, "I don't care. Take more pictures." And I took it up, and I took the photograph. I thought I had the picture of him. And the picture that I thought I had was not a good one. The picture came just seconds after. So I listened to what she said, and I always, it was a good thing to learn from her.
Yeah. Beautiful story, and the importance of having a mentor. You had the luck, the opportunity to meet such a great photographer, but sometimes it can also be photographers you've never met, or some mentors that are this voice. It's this voice in your head, as you described, that when you're in this situation, you remember something, and then
it happens all the time. And I what's other photographers like? There's great photographers. James Nachtwey is great. Don McCullin. I met him. And he was actually James Nachtwey's mentor, I think. In a way, James Nachtwey told once that he was the one he really liked, his photographs. And I met Don. He's a legend. He's a great guy. He's an old man now. And now he photographed war, Vietnam and all that. And he's now photographing landscapes, and it's his passion. And when I get old in 100 years, I want to do it the same.
One other thing I'd like to touch on with you is that there's this debate about photography in this age now. What importance does photography, or still photography, have? What kind of impact it can make with a picture? And it's all very fleeting. You reference to these Instagrammers taking also pictures in your country and Iceland, which are just these snap moments that are quickly forgotten. And you, as a photographer, looking back on a work from decades, it's for me the importance is there. Like, you might you take one picture and there's the context missing, but now you can look back and document a change that's been going on over decades, like this climate change. So if you give some advice to photographers starting out today, what is it that you would advise them, like from what you've learned over your career?
I think it would be to follow your heart and believe in what you're doing. And for me now, I have now, I have pictures that I can, redo and see, so that they have some meaning, or they will show something that, like, changes and stuff like that. And I think also just never go away from your own feelings of what you're doing and believe in it. It's hard. The road is going to be bumpy, but it's rewarding, when you get to the end of the road, whenever that is. And taking pictures, for me, it's, I never felt that I have a good photograph. I always trying to get it. So it's a lifetime's quest to go. And in the end, you might get it, you might not, but it's a drive to try to get a good photograph. My friend told me once, when we go together, we always get a good picture. And I said, no, what did you say? Don't ever say that again. I never got a good picture. And I think you're through when you think you have a good picture. Then you just can stop. I mean, imagine the Beatles, if they made Hard Day's Night and She Loves You, if they would have stopped then, they wouldn't be the Beatles today. They wouldn't remember. You always have to continue. And I would, and young photographers today is like, there are good ones, and there are also ones who take selfies of themselves. That's not, it's funny, but it's about nothing, you know. Wiggling your ass in front of a waterfall, taking pictures of yourself. It's not it's not great.
Right. And photos change. Are they like when you look back at photos you took 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and the context has changed, or your relationship to them? How do you see that? Like your whole archive when you look at that, is your look at the pictures, the images, is it changing, or?
Yeah, and so in a way, sometimes, yeah. But sometimes I feel like I did better things. You know, we were doing films, and when you went on a trip, it was like Christmas, waiting for opening up the parcels. You know, because you didn't know, you took it on film, you couldn't see the pictures as you can do now. So you never knew whether you got the moment or not. When you came back, it took a month to process the films, the negatives, and see. And it was rewarding. So that was quite fun. But now you can see it instantly. I try not to watch it. I just, continue. If you watch like football match or a handball match, you see photographers, they're all looking at the camera and they're missing the moment. So you have to concentrate on the moment, I think. But I try to change, but I always think that if you make a good rock song, why should you make a disco song? If you're good making rock songs, it's the same. I'm not going to try to be anybody else or different. So I just I try to stick with, my own feelings all the time. Mm-hmm. How to make a picture, actually.
Mm. So you continue this path, and in the years to come now you...
Yeah, it was hard when we were doing black and white. I grew up in the darkness, so I loved black and white, but because you did some stories, and nobody wanted to publish them because they were in black and white. But it had to be I'm going to stick with black and white, But my friends were selling a lot, using colors, doing color work. But I think the black and white it lives longer.
Mm-hmm. You came into contact with photography at an early age. You borrowed a camera from your father when you were around 10 years old. I think so. The camera has always been with you. Was there ever an idea of doing something else or dedicating your life to something else than photography?
Yeah, I did learn to fly and to become a pilot, but there was no jobs for pilots when I finished. Very few hired. There's only Icelandair. So I just, and I think all my families are pilots, my brothers and nephews, everybody. So they envy me for my job. They're like bus drivers today. And I have, I think, done something that, matters. They did too, but I still fly, so I use both. So it's more fun flying when you're not working as a pilot. So it's excitement all the time.
You made the right decision.
I hope so.
Well, it's been fascinating listening to you, learning about your career, about your approach to photography. And well, thank you very much for taking the time. It's been inspiring, fun conversation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Just one more question. Is there any project you are right now planning or?
Yeah, I'm working on the 8 Arctic countries and traveling around all them. Russia, I cannot skip Russia out. I have been there 4 times, and so I need a little more for that because Russia is such a big part of the Arctic. But also, I'm now also doing the consequences somewhere else, like wildfires. I want to go do that, and I went to Africa recently, coming from Sierra Leone, photographing where the ocean is taking houses, breaking them down because of the current, it's changing. So I'm trying to see the other side of it too. I like the cold better though.
Hopefully you don't get a good photograph. You think it's good because it would mean you are stopping your work. So hopefully.
I hope to get it one day.
Well, thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ja, das war das Interview mit Ragnar Axelsson. Ich hoffe, es hat dir gefallen. Ragnar ist nicht nur ein begnadeter Fotograf, sondern auch ein fantastischer Geschichtenerzähler. Stichwort Geschichten erzählen. Wenn du tiefer in das Thema Storytelling eintauchen möchtest, dann schau, wie gesagt, auf jeden Fall auch mal bei unserem Online-Kurs Abenteuer Reportagefotografie vorbei. Wir freuen uns auf dich. Vielen Dank fürs Zuhören und bis zum nächsten Mal. Dein Kai.